My next guest was a key negotiator in the room when the Senate passed the infrastructure bill. Let's welcome in Senator Angus King from Maine and welcome back our own Ylan Mui. Senator King, thank you so much for being here. Fascinated to get your insights on this. Ylan Mui has been covering all of this for us down on Capitol Hill. I know she has a question for you. Go ahead, Ylan.
Sure. Go ahead, Ylan.
Well, thanks, Eamon, and thank you, Senator King. So I was hoping that you could help us actually sort of dive into some of the substance of this bill, because we've talked a lot about the $1 trillion that's going to be spent. We've talked a lot about the sectors, the wide variety of sectors that are going to be seeing some of that money flow. How long do you think before we see an economic impact from all of this money? Do you think it's something that's going to be short-term, felt immediately, or are you really looking at this as a longer-term investment?
I think it's a longer-term investment. It's important to realize the $1 trillion people are talking about is over 5 years. And I think it will be accelerating as the bill is implemented over the next couple of years. But I want to go back to one of the comments earlier. When you're talking about a 0.6 improvement in GDP, which is what was predicted just because of this bill, that's a big deal in itself. That's productivity. That's an advance of the entire economy. This is a huge deal. This is really the biggest infrastructure, hard infrastructure project since the interstate highway system in the 50s. And the piece that I've been most involved with is broadband. We can talk about that, but that's transformational, particularly in rural areas.
Well, and I do want to talk about that because, you know, as this takes time to sort of see through the economy and for states and local governments to get some of this money, in the broadband piece in particular, students are going back to school, and so many of them still do not have access to the internet. Will this plan have enough funding to guarantee that every American really does have the opportunity to connect to broadband?
We're pretty close to that point. Yeah, it's hard to tell, but the estimates I've heard are 50 billion nationwide should do it, should connect everyone. And between this bill plus the bill that was passed in March that had 10 billion in it, we're above that number. So I can't say it's going to happen tomorrow or next week. I mean, this is a major infrastructure investment and a major construction project. But yeah, that's the idea, is to connect everyone, whether it's seniors for telehealth, students for connecting to school, or just able to do their homework in a rural area. And finally, I think this is transformational for rural areas and small towns because people will be able to work from home. They'll be able to work for any company in the country remotely, which they couldn't do without a decent connection in these rural areas, whether it's in Maine or Arkansas or Oklahoma or Montana. This is, I think, the most transformational piece of this bill. I view the broadband piece as the equivalent of the interstate highway investment in the 50s.
Well, the employers might have something to say about whether or not they can work anywhere around the country. And we're going to talk about that aspect of this debate a little bit later in this broadcast. But Senator King, so much of this debate has been about on the 30,000-foot level of how much has been spent. It's $1 trillion. There's some big numbers here. But I wonder where the rubber meets the road in your state of Maine. What's the biggest project that you think is actually going to get funded as a result of this bill? And what's that going to mean for the economy in your state?
Well, I can give you a quick breakdown. It's about $1.2 billion to Maine for highways, $225 million for bridges, and then $300 million for broadband. So that's the breakdown. How is that going to affect employment and productivity? I don't think there's much doubt that it will. I mean, infrastructure investments are what drives the underlying economy. Your economists will confirm that. And whether it's more efficient transportation, whether it's transit, broadband, and then, of course, there are pieces for EV deployment, increasing the capacity of the grid so we can move more in the way of renewables. All of that's going to have a direct. I can't say that a factory X will move to Westbrook because of this bill, but I think we're going to see overall growth in our economy in Maine, and those are the people that hired me. So that's why I'm so happy about it.